Good afternoon, friends. I hope you're all doing well today on this Monday. I'm here today, and I am chatting with Jade and Martin. If you like to read, you like Mystic, or you would like to learn more about Mystic, you may want to join us because they are the co-authors of their new book, Mystic. And we have that right here. And hi, Jade. Hi, Martin. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Great.
Nice to see you. I really appreciate both of you taking time out of your busy schedule
No worries.
with me today. I know that you have been very busy with book signings.
Yes.
And it's really funny because the way that I actually ran into both of you was Paul and I were there with our granddaughter Parker at Mystic Seaport, and they were doing a book signing that day. And of course, Paul and I both love Mystic, so we purchased this right away, and they signed it for us. And I thought a lot of people love Mystic, and a lot of my friends love to read. And so I asked them if they would do a live interview with me, and they were kind enough to say yes. And I really appreciate that you know squeezing me in because I know you've been very busy. So I guess where are you both living right now, Jade?
Okay, so I kind of split my time between Sandpoint, Idaho, and Connecticut. So living in Ledyard presently for the month while I do the book tour with Martin. But Sandpoint, Idaho is north of Idaho, about an hour south of the Canadian border.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been splitting my time between then and here. But I'm from here. I've lived here for about probably 24 years total.
So you are a native of Mystic.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. My father was military, so that's what brought us to the area originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
Mhm.
Yep. And how about you, Martin? Where are you?
I am definitely not from the area. I live in Collingswood, New Jersey, which is right across the river from Philadelphia. I
Okay.
teach out there. I went to school across the river in Philly, and then once I graduated, I moved to the suburbs. So, but yeah, I'm originally from Tennessee, but I moved to Philly 4 years ago to go to college. So.
Okay, and then you decided to stay there. You liked
Yes,
it?
yes.
Yeah.
Love
I heard
it.
that years ago. I remember it was a long time ago, but I remember hearing that most people that live in Pennsylvania don't move out, so they must like the state, How did you two actually decide to co-write the book Mystic? How did you go about it? Meaning would you bounce ideas off one another? Or would you write in the same space? Would you be in the same room? Or would you write in different spaces? Or did you do both?
Okay, so we'll start with the first question, I guess, which is how we decided to write it. It was mostly Martin's idea when he came up to visit. So I'll let him tell that story, and then we can talk a little more about how we wrote it.
Okay.
Well, I came up, she invited me up, obviously. I mean, and it was just like, hey, Connecticut, I've never been there, so let's go. So I come up, and we spent the day in Mystic, and Jade took me up and down the boardwalk, and we went through all the shops, and she showed me all the landmarks and everything. And at the time, I'd already written one book about Powhatan Village in Philadelphia, which is a small little hamlet there in the middle of the city. And I had a relationship with Arcadia Publishing, the publisher, and I looked at Jade. We were actually at Elm Grove Cemetery at the time. We had found a tombstone with my name on it, and it said Captain Martin Smith, and we were laughing about that. I was like, you know what? We should write a book about this place. And Jade was like, yeah, let's do it.
It was like a sign, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we spoke to Arcadia. They were like, yeah, we'd love to have another Mystic title. The last one had been way back in 2004,
Right.
I believe it was. So they had a lot of time in between titles. And they had their postcard history series, which this book belongs to. And so we sent them all the paperwork. We sat down. We slogged through writing the book, and we got it done. So, it was.
And building off of that, we did write it, a lot of it was here in the library.
And we are in the Mystic and Knowing Library. And this
Yes.
is my first time coming here because I know that you guys are going to be doing a book signing, right, here this
Yes.
evening?
Yep, tonight at 7.
So tonight at 7, they're going to be doing a book signing. So if anybody wanted to come down and purchase this book Mystic, and they'll sign it for you, or come on down at 7 o'clock. And I've never been here before, and my husband loves to read, and he loves libraries. And so, and we don't live far, and we come to Mystic often, but we've never been here. It's beautiful.
It's a historic library, and we write extensively about it and some of the architecture that you'll find in the library, including the staircase with marble that was imported. There are reliefs on the outside of the building that you can see actually there's a meaning to how this library was built back in the early 1900s, late 1800s. And also tonight, I just want to add really quickly, we're doing a talk. So we're going to talk about a lot of the most interesting aspects of our book and the history of postcards themselves, because there is a really interesting history behind that.
I love that because I'm sure my Facebook friends out there laughing when I say I take a lot of pictures because they don't know. Like, yes, trust me, she blows up our newsfeed with pictures. But I also take more than what I post. But wherever we go somewhere, I always buy a postcard because even the pictures I take, the postcard captures things so much more beautiful. It's a professional photographer,
Sure,
you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I love that you're writing because so many people, so I guess you could say, I put them in my photo albums, but I guess you could say I'm kind of a postcard collector, you know what I mean?
Well, you're almost making your own postcards when you post online.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, people would, my dad sent me a lot of postcards. He was in the Navy.
Right.
So that was how I communicated with him because we didn't have email, we didn't have phone calls when they're underway. So
That's right.
I got a lot of postcards from him when he would pull into port, wish you were here kind of thing. But now that has changed. So we're no longer using postcards. We're taking pictures where we go. Wish you were here. Look what I'm doing. Check out this food, you know?
Yep.
So there's a little more creative liberty to how we communicate through images now. So you're almost like your own postcard author, so to speak, by taking these pictures.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And but I always will, I'll go like in the gift shops and I'll always grab a postcard where we've been and I'll put that in with the pictures that I take, you know? So I find that interesting that you'd be discussing about postcards and having
Yeah.
a talk also. Now, the book signing we said is at 7, but does that mean the talk starts at 7 o'clock as well?
Yeah, the talk starts at 7. We're going to have images up on the projector screen, so it's going to be a very visual presentation. It's not just a lecture, and then we'll be telling people the behind-the-scenes stories of all the funny discoveries. We've made actually 3 new discoveries in this book that the Mystic Historical Society did not have recorded, and that other historical societies in the area did not have recorded. So
Wow.
there's some
Bravo, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So there's some new historic information that people can't really get anywhere else except for in this book. So we're excited about
That's
that.
wonderful.
And we'll tell you about it tonight.
Good. So
Yeah.
see, there's still time. So for those of you, I know a lot's not going on Monday nights. I know personally our Red Sox aren't playing tonight. They have the night off. So
They're so far in first place right now, they can afford to take like a week off.
It's going to be a good season for the Sox.
yeah. So if you have nothing to do and you love to read and you love Mystic, it'd be nice to get out and come here to listen to the talk and see the visual on the projector and perhaps purchase a book and everything. I think that's wonderful. And I also so a lot of the time you did spend writing here then together.
Oh, yeah.
And would you bounce back and forth, or would one of you cover something and the other cover the other? How did you divide it up?
Well, we actually took chapters. So Martin is very talented at writing about the boats. He really had an affinity for that. So I was like, you take the boat chapter. I'm not into the mechanics of all of that.
Right.
And he's much more knowledgeable about the different types of boats, although we did collaborate a little bit in trying to identify boats. So he took a lot of the boat stuff on. I took a lot of the landmark stuff because I had grown up here, so I know a lot of the kind of insider local information.
Right.
Yeah, about some of the landmarks. But we mostly divided it up for the most part. And we would consult together and edit each other's stuff to make sure that we have a second set of eyes on what we're writing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. Because when I first met you, I said, so you guys co-wrote it, or did one do illustration? You go, nope, we co-wrote it together.
Yeah,
I thought it was really neat.
It was extremely collaborative.
And it was a great process too, because not only we would write our own captions and do our introductions and everything else, but then we would go back and look at each other's work. And we'd be like, oh, this is great, or hey, maybe tighten this up, or maybe expand on this a little bit more. And that's one of the great parts about working with a co-author, especially one as talented as she is. You get.
I like that you both have so much respect for one another. No, it's a wonderful thing.
Oh, yeah, it's necessary if you're going to do a large project. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we both had the background to kind of do this historical research. This is kind of where we came from and what we studied when we were in college and everything else. And again, you have to be passionate about the area. And I fell in love with the place at first sight, but she grew up here, and this was home for her. And she has memories of things when she was, a teenager even doing, going to have a good time and hanging out. And so it gave us kind of a firm foundation to do that, but then we were able to kind of divide and conquer and then work together. So
Yeah, because like I said, Paul and I love Mystic. We've been one of my sons got us a night for Mother's Day at the Whalers Inn, and it was before the season, before Memorial Day, and the season's really hopping in Mystic.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always been Mystic. Paul worked, with the state for 30 years, and for how many years, honey, that you worked at Mystic?
10.
10 years.
Oh.
He was working with his crew in Mystic, and he said, like, we walked and walked in those 2 days, like, I don't know, one day we did like 11 miles because we had like a, you know, what is it, the pedometer?
Oh, yeah.
And then another day, I think we like did like 8 miles, but we saw so much by walking around that even though we came to Mystic several times before, we usually didn't see because we usually were going to a destination, like going to Old Mystic Village and walk around the village, or, you know, my jewelers, Majestic Jewelers is in Mystic, you know, we go to the jewelry store or whatever, but this time we just walked all around, and there's just so much beauty, you know, and it was quiet, but it was still gorgeous because it was, you know, it was May, so it was nice, but it wasn't after Memorial Day yet, so it wasn't hopping with everybody like during the, you know, the tourist season.
Yeah, and the things that are nice about areas like Mystic is they were built before cars.
Yeah.
So a lot of the biggest historical sites that there are to see in Mystic are within walking distance of each other.
Yeah.
So this book also functions as kind of a walking tour. There's a lot of views that you're going to get in these postcards that the locals should be able to recognize, and even tourists will be able to recognize. So you can kind of take this book, for example, the cover is the main street here. This is the Gilbert Block. There's the chocolate store is right here. You can see the second iteration of the bridge. This was before the Bascule Bridge went in. And then on the back side, you have the other side of the bridge at that time. So this is where the ice cream store is, the Mystic Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
We've been there before.
Drawbridge ice cream.
Drawbridge ice
Yeah.
cream, yep. And then here is not really a laundromat, but a facility where people could get laundry done. And Mystical Toys is here now. S&P Oyster would be right here behind the railing there. So it's so recognizable, and because it was built before cars, where people had to walk places.
That's right.
It's very walkable.
Well, it was funny because one day my husband said, he goes, we're going to go in every store on that strip. And I laughed, and we certainly did. But he always went to the Mystical Toys. Because,
Oh, yeah.
And he has, you know, we have 3 grandchildren, but our grandson's out in California, and he would purchase things there and send it to him, you know, and he loved that store, and he used to go when his daughter was younger, but we went in every single store, like, on that strip, you know.
Oh, wow.
I needed a lot of discipline, you know, spending. I'm not saying I'm a shopaholic, I'm not, but I like to shop, okay?
Mystic's a good place to do it.
And that's just, you know, like you said, the main street. And then there's so much more, like when we were walking, like on the outskirts and everything now, and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you see there's beautiful
Very
illustrations.
recognizable. A lot of it has not changed.
No, and beautiful
Some of it has.
illustrations throughout the book.
Yeah. Like, for example, here, the Mystic Depot Coffee Roasters is in the train station now. This is still a working train station.
Right. Amtrak still has a route that goes through there. They have a kiosk and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of sites that people are going to be able to recognize, both from now and then.
So it's still working train station. So where does it take you to? Because, you know, I take a like Metro North lot out to New York City.
Oh,
and stuff.
yeah,
So where
that's-
does this one go to?
Amtrak is not a Metro North line. I think
No.
Amtrak you can...
Oh, so it's Amtrak that's running through.
Sure,
it.
yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
All right, so no, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I got you.
Not quite
Perfect.
as accessible as Metro North, but...
Right.
No, but Amtrak's
Yeah.
so good. Yeah, it's still running and good. Beautiful. And the thing is look too, because I love like even the winter scenes. You know, like because that's the thing about New England. While Mystic is so popular, you know, because we all know about the aquarium and the seaport. It's very popular in the summer, but really New England, I mean, all 4 seasons.
It's so
gorgeous.
charming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It just says,
All year round.
and you know, that's another thing that
And we have actually a whole chapter devoted to seasons.
yeah.
So you can see
You
it.
do?
There's one postcard actually in the early 1900s in the spring where you can see the buds on the trees opening up, but the river is frozen. So people are ice skating on the river, and
I
it
love
just
that.
so happened that year there was a lot of weird weather anomalies occurring, and so we talk about that in the book too.
Yeah.
So you can see all of the seasons. We have the
We
carolers.
love ice skating, Paula. Yeah, I love that. And I love the carolers too.
I know,
You
yeah, it's a tradition
We
here,
wrote about
yeah.
the carolers too. We did.
Yes,
Yes.
we wrote about them. Mhm.
You know what we do too is like we go a lot of times at Mystic Seaport. We always go to their Halloween and their Christmas like
Yes, the
lighted
lantern.
tours,
Yep. Mhm.
and they bring you back in time. And I think that's so cool because I think sometimes like you know, well, not that Halloween's a holiday, but you know, with Christmas, sometimes we lose sight of like the importance, and it just slows you down a bit.
Sure.
It brings you back to a slower period. You know what I mean? And I like that. You know, Mystic has so much to offer. I mean, just the restaurants alone.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can tell you're a local because you know about all these things.
Yeah, well, my husband, yeah, he's you know, has been a long time member, and then had me become a member at Mystic Seaport, and that's what we arranged that guys. But even my children, they're my eldest will be 30 this Friday, so they range from like 26, I have to think for a minute, to 30. And, you know, they love coming to Mystic to go out
Yeah.
to eat, or, you know, just things like that, for social reasons.
And those are the type of memories that postcards trigger, and these are the type of memories that this book is going to trigger. So already we're just talking about the postcards, and you're like, oh, I know the carolers and the lantern light tours, and that's what people,
And
that's what we're hoping the book does for people.
And I'm sure it will. And I'm not going to lie, I purchased a book from you guys when I saw you, but I didn't have a chance to read it yet. And my husband,
You're going to love it.
He's really the reader, but we never chance to, you know, I told you we babysit the granddaughters 3 days a week.
Oh,
And
yes.
My
She's
daughter's
beautiful, bud.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Oh,
Parker
my
is
gosh.
adorable.
She's
She
so
really
cute.
is.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. And so we plan on reading it, and so we will. And he's definitely a big reader, so I know that's no problem there. He polishes off like a book in a day. But so when I was saying this stuff, like, it's not like I read your book and I knew it was in it. It's just I was bringing up in conversation
Right.
and I haven't been,
These
so
are
it's
all
kind
the
of, it's
mystic
really cool
things.
to know.
And it's mostly pictures, so even if you don't want to read, you can just flip through and go, I know where that is.
That's
That's
me,
what that
yeah.
looked like 100
Yeah.
years ago? No
Yeah.
kidding. So you can do that even if you don't want to read. That's
Yeah.
the beauty of the
So
postcard.
it's a kind of book that you can read and find out about, like, these 3 historical things that you found that, you know,
Mhm.
wasn't even on registered as historical.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you can read it in depth, or you
Or
can
just
skim it and just see different things and highlights. Because a lot of times I'll do that, I'll skim like
Mhm.
booklets, and like Paul and I, when we travel, I'm like, oh, okay, so I want to go visit this because we didn't see that last time. So
Mhm.
let's go visit this, or I want to see this, you know, through skimming and
Mhm.
seeing pictures of, like, I know that'll catch my interest.
Yep, absolutely.
You know, and that'll draw me in,
Mhm.
you know?
Yep.
Because I'm more of a visual person, like when tonight you'll be doing the projector, you know?
Yes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And so now we kind of answered it, but so I'm kind of repeating the question a little bit because you explained why you wrote about Mystic. But because my next question was going to be about that, because I was saying anybody who's been to Mystic, we all know about its beauty. You know, we know about the seaport and the aquarium, and but there's a lot of gorgeous towns and cities in the United States. We're really lucky to be, you know, to be
Mhm.
you know, in this country. And so again, when you saw Mystic, and you know, Pennsylvania's a beautiful state, you know, where you are and everything, again, what really, I know when you were visiting, you know, the cemetery and you saw your name, you figured this was a sign and quaint, but was there anything a little bit more that said, we need to write about Mystic?
Well, and as I said, I had the privilege to write about a village of Philadelphia. There was a lot of history in Powhatan, a lot of activism. There was the move incident where the Philadelphia Police Department decided to bomb itself, you know, bomb the city.
Yep.
And so that kind of history fascinated me because I was living there. But I came here, and if you look around Mystic, above and beyond all the tourist stuff, and above and beyond all the shopping and all the food and
That's
everything
right.
else, the history here is so entrenched. I mean, and it's not just the history of America growing up and revolutionary history and everything else. I mean, it predates that, you know, Native American issues and, you know, the issue of genocide among those, you know, those races and everything else. But also, you know, there's a lot of working class history here, and we talk about that a lot. We talk about Irish immigrants and building things, and Italians and working in the shipyards and the things that they do along those lines. So you've got not only, you know, monument history, which you've got with the drawbridge and with the houses and everything else, but you've got the history of the fabric of the people that make America.
And I like that, because you know what? A lot of times when you think of Mystic, you kind of think like, expensive or just, so I like that you're bringing that into Mystic as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's, even though it gives off that, you know, aura, it is a quaint town for everybody and everybody to enjoy it, because that's what it was built on, for regular people, you know,
Absolutely.
regular, ordinary, you know,
Yeah.
people, yeah.
Exactly.
You know? And then, let me see, now, I was gonna ask if this is the first book that either of you have written. Now, you said that you did write a book previously,
Yes.
and so I know that this isn't. For you, Jade, is this your first book?
This is actually, it's not my first published piece, but it is my first book. Yes,
Book, okay.
absolutely. Martin has a lot more experience in other books.
So, how do you feel about this, and how has it been? Now, you guys have been on a book signing, and right, tour with this book,
Yes.
and so where have you been going for it? Have you been
Oh,
staying
gosh.
local in here, or have you been signing different places? Because Mystic really is known throughout the whole United States.
Sure.
You know, people
Yeah.
come here to vacation.
I guess Fairfield was the one where we went the furthest out, but everything else has kind of been in the Mystic, Stonington, Groton area.
Yeah,
It's been very local.
Fairfield, and we did Yale University last year. We did a talk there. We did Fairfield University yesterday. So
Yes.
those are probably the furthest we've gone. Although we've had some interest expressed in other places, we've mostly stayed local because the tourists are already here. The people that are really interested in Mystic are already here, but we're certainly not averse to doing events elsewhere. For example, there was a magazine publisher from New York City who had approached us when we were in the Mystic Seaport, who wants us to write a piece. So New York may be a market too that
Absolutely.
works.
Yeah.
A lot of people from New York.
My husband also subscribes to Yankee Magazine
Mhm.
too, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
Mhm.
because I remember my cousin years ago came from like, she was in New Hampshire, and it's not like 2 hours in New Hampshire, it was like deeper, like 4 hours, and she came all the way here and stayed overnight with her family to do like the lantern lighted tour at the
Yep.
seaport for Christmas.
Mhm.
So a lot of people come from just all over the United States to come visit, you know, and especially now with the casinos both here too, you know,
Mhm.
gives them more reasons to come.
Mhm.
Now, so people know out there, like if they're not able to make it here tonight, where can they purchase your book? You know, are they in all bookstores? Are they in certain places in Mythic? You know, could you give a, you know?
Sure. Well,
Drop
if you
a few
prefer to buy
names.
local, they're at Bank Square Books.
Yes.
They're also in the Mystic Seaport Museum bookstore.
Yes.
They are barnesandnoble.com.
Okay.
I believe they're also at Books A Million in Waterford.
Yes.
You can also purchase it from Amazon. You probably get it for a better price on Amazon. You can buy direct through the publisher,
Yes.
or you can buy through us.
And also locally, they're at the Whalers Inn in Mystic. They're at the Frankfurt General Store in Old Mystic.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to think of the Mystic Army Navy Store.
Oh, yes.
And the gentleman that does the postcards for the Mystery Army Navy Store, Ellery, he so helpful in the book. He wrote the forward for the book. He gave us a lot of the material that we use with some of the modern images, and they carry it there as well. So and they've always been fantastic with us. So.
That's wonderful, thank you. So anybody that's interested in purchasing, there's lots of places that you can get it from. There shouldn't be a problem purchasing a copy if you want. And now, I know that you're doing the book signing here tonight, but do you have one lined up for tomorrow night too?
Yeah, tomorrow night we're
I
doing...
thought I remembered you guys saying that when I met you, yeah.
Yes, tomorrow night is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be at the Jealous Monk doing pub trivia there, and sprinkled into the pub trivia questions will be questions about Mystic history. Each team will have a book on the table, so when we ask a Mystic history question, they can either answer it off the top of their heads, or they can choose to flip through the book and find the answer.
So that's my kind of quiz, guys, my kind of trivia, open book, right?
Yes,
That's
yes,
what I
open
like
book
in
quiz
school.
right there, yes.
Even then I was bad in school, open
Yeah.
book, where is it, you know?
Yeah, and the winning teams will get signed copies,
Wow.
as well as the prize that comes from the Jealous Monk pub trivia regularly.
Yes.
So it's going to be a really good time. Drunk history, so to speak.
Okay, so the Jealous Monk, you can go tomorrow night, and what time does that start?
It starts at 8. I think it's from 8 to 10.
8 to 10, yes.
8 to
Pub
10,
trivia.
for those of you that like trivia, and it'll be questions about Mystic, and at a table, whoever the winner is, the team will get each table,
The winning teams will get
the winning teams?
each
Yeah.
team will have a book to consult
Right?
throughout the trivia game, and then at the end, the winning team will get.
So the winning team would get a autographed book and the prize that Jealous Monk usually gives too. So
Yeah.
you're getting like double duty if you go tomorrow night.
And you get to meet us, and if you don't win, then you can always just buy a signed copy.
We don't have
That's
plenty
right.
of them available.
That's right, get to meet these guys, which is
Yeah.
a privilege in itself.
Oh.
So that sounds like fun. That's
Yeah.
gonna be fun.
It will be.
And so now, I have a question. So, well, first of all, it's funny, before I ask this one, you know, obviously you both enjoy writing, you know, I mean, as I myself do, no, I haven't wrote a book. I write in a gratitude journal all the time, but I like writing, I love writing, but I'm not, you know, to be honest, a really big reader. I used to be when I was younger, I used to read a lot, and then it kind of dwindled out, but I love writing. So I know you both are pushing, you know, the pen to the paper and stuff, but do you love to read as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you can be a good writer without being a fascinating reader. And I run into it all the time. And there's people that I deal with that are also writers that read 10 times the amount that I read.
And so now, who's your favorite author?
My favorite author is Mercedes Lackey. She's a fantasy author. I remember,
I'm like, yeah, since I don't read a lot, tell me about her.
you know, wizards and you know that type of D&D type stuff. Writing is what
Okay.
she does. But I remember picking one of her books up in the library when I was in high school when I was 16 years old. It looked like nobody ever pulled things off the shelf before.
Right.
And it was part of a 3 series, and so I just started reading, and then I get to the next book, and you know I couldn't put them down. And you know she's written 25 to 30 books, and I think I've read them all at least twice. So I mean, when you find something that you really like and somebody that's a really good writer, that can build a world and can
Yeah. Things aren't always up. You know, we have ups and downs in life. And so it takes us out of our life and into somebody else's situation. So it's kind of relaxing. I know for a lot of people, like, you know, my husband loves to read, my best friend Rhonda loves to read a lot. It's very relaxing for them.
Yes.
You know, they enjoy it. And so do you like to read as well? And who's
Yeah.
your favorite author? And
I think my favorite author has got to be Mary Roach.
Okay.
She is, she writes kind of creative nonfiction. She writes about different scientific things. She wrote a book about, I guess, dead people. I didn't read that one, but my favorite book of hers is Bonk, The Curious Coupling of Science and Sex. And it's actually a look into the history of sexual research and how that began actually with Napoleon's great-granddaughter, I think.
okay.
And so then she takes us into modern day and the challenges with researching that today in terms of funding and differences in generational perspectives on the appropriateness of researching the biological aspects of sex. And she's very funny. So
Yeah.
she's a woman author. She's hilarious. She writes about science.
Yeah.
And just I could not put her book down the last time I picked it up. So
So that's your so you enjoy.
I think Mary Roach.
Yeah.
Mhm.
would
Yeah.
be your favorite.
I think she's on the New York Times bestseller
Yeah,
list
she
as
was.
well.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Good to know.
she's very funny. Mhm.
Good to know. I love funny.
She's
I love
hilarious.
funny. Mhm.
Yeah.
I love funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, when you're not putting your pen to the paper, what you do now, Martin, I believe that you're a professor, right?
Yes,
When
I-
we met,
yes.
And where are you teaching it?
I do double duty. I'm a professor of children's literature and adolescent literature at Rowan University in Glassboro, New Jersey.
Okay.
Actually, I just started that post. My first course is on September 5th, so
Yeah, it
um,
starts soon.
pretty big appointment. I was really excited about it. And I also teach composition and rhetoric at Harcum College, which is in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. It's right there on the main line outside of Philly.
Yeah.
So, and then I have my dog, who I absolutely love. He's a Shetland sheepdog named Che. And I have,
Che.
I love my children more than I love my dog, I guess I should qualify them. But I have two kids as well, Nicholas and Leah, and they're absolutely fantastic children.
I was going to ask if you had children because later we're going to talk because Martin also wrote a children's book. And I was going to say what inspired you to write a children's book. So was it that you have children?
That was a little bit of it. When I first started writing children's books, I never imagined myself doing picture books, and I kind of did it as a rebellion project when I was in my first semester of college at Penn. And the professor ended up loving it. I'm like, now I'm kind of stuck doing this for the rest of my life. So, no, I kid. But,
Right.
but I ended up kind of writing the picture books that I wanted to read as a kid that I never got to because nobody was covering the topics that I wanted to read. So.
Right. So you got to do that as an adult.
Yes.
You know, for other children who think the same way that you did.
Absolutely.
When you were younger.
And it's a different world. I mean, we proudly identify as millennials, especially, as millennial historians and educators and writers and everything else. And it's important for us to make sure that our generation is able to kind of put our stamp on the world of both history and literature.
Yeah, I agree. Because I'm part of that generation too. Not. All right, I'm pretending. I always like to put myself back a
Honorary
few years.
millennial.
I also like to put myself back a few years if I can. Okay. I like to pretend.
You can certainly pass, that's for sure.
Hey, you've been too kind. Thank you. I'll take it though, even if it's a white lie. I'll take it. And so, with you now, I see that you studied political science at UConn, and I always followed politics very closely. No, well, not always. When I was younger, I could care less. But as I got a certain age, so I shouldn't say always, but I have for quite a few years now. I would say at least I would say 25 years. That I follow and everything. And so, when you took political science, was your interest to maybe go into politics someday? Was it law, or was it just history itself that you just love? Because I know here you're just speaking a lot of history.
Yeah.
Talking about that, or.
Well, initially it was that I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to actually work as an attorney, and when I first started studying political science, I wanted to be a criminal prosecutor. But the more I learned about the systems and the injustices therein, I decided I would rather do criminal defense. And then that changed into the history of things, where you start looking at the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution, the roles they all played. I transferred from UConn to Smith College in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So Women's Ivy out there.
Yeah.
And so there I got really into the history with one of my favorite professors. His name is Professor Kobe.
All right, let's give Professor Kobe a
Yes.
shout out.
He wrote
We always remember our good teacher.
Yeah,
right?
he
That
was
make a difference.
fantastic. And he wrote a role-play game for people to learn how the Constitution was written, where he would assign you a role as one of the framers of the Constitution, and you actually had to simulate the Constitutional Convention in class. And then I really kind of fell down the rabbit hole of the history of all that and all of these people and where they come from and how their lives had influenced their political perspectives. And then I just kind of went off on the history path. So it
So
looks
that's where
kind
you're
of
at. Yeah, so but
yeah.
that's good because now you're like on the direction that you're supposed to be.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because
Sure.
we all like, we all say like, oh, I want to do this, but then God has different plans, and we end up like sometimes doing something else, but everything that we've done brings us to where we are.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
believe everything in our past prepares us for our future, like
Mhm.
where we're supposed to go.
Mhm. Yeah,
And so I think that's probably exactly what happened there.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it'd be a much nicer world and kinder world. So to be involved in that too.
It is.
Yes.
I still gravitate towards politics a lot personally, but
Yeah, I
history
think,
is
I
a
do
good.
too.
History also helps us understand politics,
Yes.
even in the modern day. And I don't know who had said this originally, but there's a quote that says, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme."
Yeah.
And so when you look at the past century, there's a lot of patterns that are kind of repeating themselves.
Yeah, because a
today.
lot of people do say history repeats itself, and I go, not always. I don't believe in that. A lot of stuff like
Not directly.
Things happen, like even, this isn't, of course, history, but even like with clothes, you'll see trends come back.
There are
you know?
parallels,
Mhm.
right?
And
Cyclical
they come back
parallels.
and stuff like that. And I think the same thing with history.
Mhm.
The same kind of thing. It's
And
like
fashion's a good analogy for
Yeah.
that because it always
Yeah.
comes back, but not quite the same
not
way.
quite the same. There's a different spin on
Mhm.
it, but it comes back.
Yeah, so it
and
doesn't
it's-
repeat, but it does rhyme.
Yeah. And I agree. And I like when people of different political parties or people that are independent or whatever can discuss politics without getting heated, or just like
Sure.
respect the other's opinion, even if you don't agree. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because I think that a lot of my friends are on the opposite side of politics that I am, but I can listen to them with an open mind and I don't get upset about it or anything like that. I think that's
Yeah.
always a healthy thing.
And I think
Because sometimes if you're open-minded, you can learn, and then you know what I mean? And I don't think it's
Sure.
always black and white. I think there's always gray.
Always.
In every aspect
Absolutely.
of life. I believe there's always like a gray
Yeah.
area. Because that being said, I'd really like to say we're all sorry about, Senator John McCain, because I don't care what side of politics you're on.
Sure.
I think everybody realizes that he served our country,
Sure.
he's like an American hero, and we all
Sure.
appreciate his service. You know
Sure,
what I mean?
Sure.
Sure,
So that's a
absolutely.
good example that just recently happened.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that too about politics, the more that you can discuss it with other people, I think the more that you learn that the stereotypes that we're taught
It's not true.
are not necessarily true. So the stereotypes about
Exactly.
conservatives and the stereotypes about liberals, a
I
lot of the
agree.
time you find common ground on a lot of issues.
We have more in common than not. You know what I
Absolutely,
mean?
absolutely.
Exactly.
And I think that the narrative that gets parroted through these hyper politicized media
I don't like the
outlets
stereotypes either. Yeah, because that's the way it
encourages
makes
fighting.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have these very corporate run media outlets that are parroting this stereotypical idea of what liberals look like and what conservatives look like. And
I
I think
agree.
that when you actually talk to people, you find that there
Absolutely.
are commonalities.
There's a lot of common ground, and we're more alike than different.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
most of
Mhm.
us,
We really are.
I think they just do that because they're going to their extreme base and trying to get reelected.
Mhm.
A lot of politicians, they get in, and before they even finish halfway of their first term, they're already running for their second term. And
They
that's
call
why
it the
I think
constant
we should-
campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think it should be like term limits,
Yeah.
just like with presidents and the
Mhm.
senates,
Yes,
congressmen, and all
absolutely.
that, because I think that if there were, that they would really, get along better and try to get something done while they're in there,
Mm-hmm.
instead of, trying to campaign to the extreme
Sure.
that they think is gonna get them in,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But, so, what else? Let me see. Mhm. Okay, so with your history, do you write for that? Do you do any teaching with that? Do you do any, with the path that you are now? Are you, anything job related or?
Yeah. So I'm mostly writing now. So we have.
you really are, that's kind of like full-time for you right now.
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah. We actually just signed a title on Stonington.
Yes.
So we're going to be writing a book now, just like this, except images of America. So not postcards, but old historic pictures. We're working working in conjunction with the Thomas Stanton Society on
Mhm.
Stonington.
Yes, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
You already asked me one of my next questions. I was going to say, do you plan on writing another book together?
There
Yes,
you go.
absolutely.
Well,
Well,
readers.
And as talented as she is, she deserves the time to kind of worry about nothing but writing. I have to find another way to pay the bills. But she is.
Right, but just to devote it, and you really
Right.
can.
Sure,
That's
sure.
nice.
Yeah.
And so that one's going to be titled, did you say,
Images of America, Stonington.
Images of America Center?
Mhm.
Right.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
It's,
So.
it's the same. The Powhatan book that I wrote originally. It's in the same series as that. So Governor similar and everything else, but it's about a much more interesting town.
That's wonderful. So obviously this has been a very good experience for the two of you together. They
Absolutely.
can go on and do another. I think
Absolutely.
that's great.
Yeah, and it probably won't be our last title. And I
Oh.
also do research at the Bonner County Historical Society in Sandpoint.
Okay.
I'm also the vice president of the Sandpoint Literary Collective, so I'm
Oh,
doing
good
a
to
lot of
know.
different,
Yes.
work with various literary endeavors.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good to know. And it's, and like, I think it's nice when you have two people working together that you can trust. Like you said, you can look over each other's work and be honest and say,
Sure.
well, this is nice, but, because I think we all want that constructive criticism.
It's helpful.
Yeah, we don't want somebody saying, hey, that's,
Yeah.
that's no good, but we want somebody, to say, hey, maybe you could do it differently like
Yeah.
this, And I think with each other, you have that kind of team.
Yeah, we do.
Well, and a lot of times, I mean, and that's the thing about, writing in general, you have to be willing to kill your darling, so to speak. It's a lot easier when you have somebody that's kind of there with you at the ceremony, so to speak.
At the funeral.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this caption, here we are, dearly beloved, but yeah.
No.
But it makes it kind of go down easier when you're sitting there and you're just like, okay, I can see why you're saying I should look at this in a different perspective and kind of correct it, clean it up, and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Fresh eyes are always a wonderful thing to have in the world of writing.
Yeah, people pay big money for that in the literary world,
Yeah.
for editors and people to tell about that.
Yeah.
And I get to work with the best editor,
Please.
in the States. I'm free.
Yeah, but there you go, right?
Yeah.
And so, and it's like sometimes, I would think that when you're hiring editors, like they're writing how they feel about it, but they don't really know you, because you're working for not just you, they're working for a lot, but where you are together, you're just helping each other and you're working together.
Absolutely.
So you want the best
Yeah.
for what it's gonna be your work put out there.
Sure.
It's not somebody else's idea
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
of what it should be about Mystic that maybe never stepped into Mystic. You know what I mean? That's editing the book.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think that's key too. I think that plays a big, I would think. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know anything, like I said.
No, you're definitely
I
onto
write in a
something.
gratitude journal, that's it. You know what I mean?
You have a literary mind to do interviews like this, but you actually definitely hit the nail on the head. He isn't from here, so he sees Mystic in a very different way
Yes.
than locals will see it.
Exactly.
So he can tell me what he finds interesting as someone who hasn't grown up here that I may think is old hat.
Right.
Right,
And then
because
there's
to you, it's like, a lot of times, like I remember my girlfriend and I went to the Hamptons one weekend, and there was a couple coming up, and we went to a vineyard, and I said, hi, and we were talking to them, and I said, is it your first time? And they said, yeah, and I said, oh, where are you from? Because that's where we were from, and we said, we're in Connecticut, and I asked where they were from, and they go, right down the street, they go, and we've never been here before. So I think, like we always say, a lot of us don't
So
visit
true.
places in our own backyard. And like Paul and I, a few years ago, started doing that. Like we started going to the Trumbull, right?
Fort Trumbull.
Fort Trumbull, thank you.
Yeah.
And then we went to Fort
Griswold.
Griswold.
On the other side.
And like we've driven by those places numerous times, but never stopped in. So actually, I said, we're going to stop. We're going to start doing things that are like local, like nearby, And we started seeing places, and we would post it up so other people could see it and go. And a lot of the stuff, it's like it doesn't cost anything, or it's
No.
minimal. And we started seeing so much, and we haven't even still covered our state of Connecticut, never mind other states, and in
Right.
Brooklyn in general. And even with like we went over to the museum in Foxwoods and just different
Yes.
things. That was it. Just
That's the real start of history.
yeah,
Is
it's
the
with the
Massachusetts
Native
Pequot
Americans
the
and all
Mohegan
that.
tribes.
And,
Yes.
I'll be honest, when I was younger, like history was like
Boring.
my least favorite subject.
Me too.
And that's one thing that
You know?
we've discussed extensively is that, especially being millennials and everything else, the way that we were taught history and the way that it's been taught for the last 100 years is not engaging.
Well, you're daydreaming. I was daydreaming, like, what am I going to do when I get out of this class? What do I do this week with my friends? But, now I find that Paul and I, when we travel, we go to a lot of museums. Like, we just went to Washington, D.C. It was a year ago in May, and a lot of the Smithsonian, sorry, I have Invisalign in, so my speech sometimes gets slurred. So we went to a lot of Smithsonian museums, and which a lot of them are free of charge. You don't have to pay to get in if you go to Washington, D.C. And then the other thing is we went and we did like museums of all the like the World War II, for the Marines, for the Navy. We went, we didn't miss a thing. Vietnam, Korean, everything.
Wow.
I mean, and I find that now I'm very, as I get older, I'm just very, very interested in everything, all the sacrifices that people made for us, the architecture, everything that people did, like all their energy. Like Paul will always say that, like he'll touch something, or like where we're at in the museum, and he goes, look at this, look at the energy they put into this.
Yeah.
Even when we go to like different churches, like when we're away and we go to mass, it's just it's so intriguing now, you know what I mean? And we do a lot of that now, and we find it very interesting. So as you get older, but it's different because you're learning in the real world.
Yes.
You know, it's not in a classroom where you're like this and just like, you know,
Here's the date,
dates of
here's
the
what
war,
happened,
and
blah, blah,
yeah,
blah. Yep.
yeah.
Yes.
Memorization, we preach against that extensively. And I was
Yeah.
fortunate when I was at Penn to work with some professors that were very intent on giving us hands-on stuff to do. I mean, when you have a professor, his name was Peter Stollybrass, and he hands you this book that was written by this gentleman named Francis Pistorius back in 1692. And this guy wrote in 13 languages. He came over from Germany. And he's handwritten this book that's about this tall and about this wide, and it's in 2 volumes that are this thick each. And it's over 1,000 pages where he was trying to make the first early American encyclopedia. You've got that 400-year piece of history in your hands. It's hard not to be contagious and passionate about it.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's like, you know, when we saw the original Declaration of Independence from Washington, they're like no pictures, not even without a flash, because you know the paper can fade and all that.
Right.
Where you're like, you can't believe you're looking at this stuff, and then you realize and a lot of times Paul will say to me like, we're really so insignificant, you know, because like just the world and everything that, you know, all the people that have come before us, what they've done, what people continue to do, you know, that we are just really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, everything's just, you know, that's why it's nice when you see things like a community working together, you know, for a cause, for one
Sure,
cause,
yeah.
you know, or something.
And it
like
can
that.
seem insignificant, but there will come a day where people who are walking around Mystic right now will have stories to tell about history. History is happening as we speak.
Yes.
Exactly.
Everywhere, all
It's
over the
always
place.
evolving.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah.
You know, and like I said too, like, you know, even the smallest things, like sometimes we could do a really small kind of act that to us we don't even think about, but that could change somebody else's
Absolutely.
day or life,
Absolutely.
and vice versa. Somebody could do that for us. I know I've had friends that have done what they think is really small, but to me was really huge. You know, and the same thing with history. And a lot of times, you know, people don't even know they're going to make history, and by the time they do, they're not even here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like there's people making history that aren't even aware that they're going to make history
Sure,
someday.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, part of what inspired me most about writing the book was that I have my own personal history here. Like we used to skip class and go to the Green Marble and
Yeah.
have coffee, you know? Or when I
You
was
skipped class?
Yeah, oh yes, and history class. And when I was and when we were and I had my first date at the German Club where they had all kinds of concerts for kids that was actually started by German nationals who worked at the Rossi Velvet Mill where the
Yes.
Mystic Museum now, or Mystic Museum archives now are archived. There's all these buildings that I had a personal history with that I never knew had that extensive a history behind it before me. But then you can read just little snippets of this. It's very digestible that talk to you about what we found most interesting about history, the people that lived there,
Yes.
the things that
It's
happened.
always about the people, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
and the
like,
lives
you know,
the part of their lives that is relatable. For example, the Whalers Inn used to be the Hoxie House, and a rash of scarlet fever swept through. And scarlet fever was so ubiquitous at the time that it would leave some people deaf. So the Mystic Oral School, which we write about in the book, was started to help deaf people
Absolutely.
learn how to communicate in other ways.
And it didn't close down until the 80s. I mean, and the
Sure.
state kept it running for as long as they could. The building's still there.
Oh, were you familiar with that? Because he worked for the state
Yeah.
Oh,
in that
yeah.
field.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, I see him and I'm like, hey, he must be able to relate to that.
Sure, and so these are things that you can think, my gosh, how awful would that be? People say all the time, would you rather lose your hearing or your sight? But these people really did lose their hearing.
I couldn't pick. I mean, both
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
You just can't imagine. And I think the
So that's
worst.
relatable.
Yeah, and I think that the worst thing is like there's people that are born that way, so they don't know any different. I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Sure.
But I think when you lose it, you know what you lost because you were able to see things. You know, you were able,
Sure.
or you know, you were able to hear, and then all of a sudden it's taken away from you. You know, I can't even imagine what
It becomes harder to speak, right? And so these are things that when you read about, you go, my gosh, like that's terrible, you know?
Yeah.
And these
I
are,
think it also makes you more compassionate
Yes.
Absolutely.
and empathetic, and I think I think those two things are missing in today's society a little bit. You know, I think that with like, you know, when Paul and I were younger, it was like there were 3 news channels, you know, and it'd be on like at noon and then 6 o'clock at night, you know, and it'd be like ABC, CBS, NBC. And now with the 24/7, it's almost like we get desensitized to things.
and over, yeah.
And I don't like that, you know. I don't want to hear that there was a school shooting or some mass shooting and not feeling that, oh my God, that's awful. You know what I mean? But it's almost like, you know, that you don't want to lose your compassion, you don't want to lose your empathy. And so it's so important, I think, like you said, that when you hear other people's stories, you can connect, or you try to relate, and you're like, I can't imagine, or what would that be like, or you try to, we can't put ourselves in other people's shoes, but we can try to and say, oh, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah. And that's hard to do even modern day, but historically it becomes even more difficult. So we try to write about the aspects of history that are relatable and that people will say, wow, about.
Yeah.
You learn about the people who lived here. Like you were talking about the Irish Catholics who were brought here to build the ships. A lot of people don't know that they did a lot of that shipbuilding. Then Italians were brought in to build the railroads.
Right.
And then, there's all a people's history really here that doesn't get talked about in history.
Yeah, because we are, they say New York City's a melting pot, but really all of America's a melting pot.
Sure,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we talk about the real people.
Yes, and this country was built on the backs of immigrant labor. I mean, and my ancestors were Irish Catholic, and they came over, from County Galway in Ireland, and they died in upstate New York, but
Yeah, you had to go like through Ellis Island and that stuff.
Absolutely, went through Ellis Island.
We just went there like a couple,
I took my kids back there in June. It was amazing.
Yeah, we took them right over to Liberty Island and Ellis. It's nice.
And they loved it. And my kids are second generation.
How old are your children, by the way?
Nicholas is 14 and Leah's 12.
Oh, so they're a good age to go.
they
You
are.
just went? Did they just go this summer?
This summer, yes.
Oh, that's a good age. I can
and
appreciate
Nicholas
it.
got to come to Mystic too and see a little bit of that.
Oh,
and see Riverside.
I bet they love that.
Such a good kid. But they're second generation Asian Americans. Their mother's from Thailand.
Okay.
And so it's important for them to understand those immigrant narratives, and those regardless of where somebody's immigrating from in the world, it's all still working class narratives, because you've got a bunch of people that came to this country looking for an opportunity that they didn't have in their other parts of the world, and you can discuss whether or not that turned out how they hoped. But
The American dream.
sure, absolutely,
You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
And we talk a lot about, so all of these things are so relatable.
absolutely.
So you can read one caption and then get a whole conversation out of it. So
Absolutely.
that was a lot of our goal in writing this, is to write the stories that we didn't hear in school about, like the Mashantucket Pequot. It was the first genocide that really occurred on American soil, was right here in Mystic, or Fort Missituck, where the Mashantucket Pequots lived before John Mason showed up in the 1630s.
And you didn't learn that in the
You
classroom?
don't, and they don't frame it that way. You hear about John Mason's statue, you hear about some of the controversy that happened in the 1990s, which we discuss briefly in the book. But there are so many more narratives that I think a lot of people will relate to, that we really wanted to touch upon, that you aren't going to get from other.
Right, other sources. You just aren't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, and so it's just a glimpse. You can read a little more about it in other resources if you want, but it's a very digestible, relatable.
And then in the next book, you'll broaden out even more by doing
Stonington.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, doing Stonington. So that's nice. It's I'm partial. Of course, I live here, but I love this. I love New England in general. It's very historic everywhere you go.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the foundings of, even before the country. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Puritan movements that brought, European settlers to the United States, and they all congregated in this area. If you look at all the states in New England, they're basically based around different religious sects. Like, Pennsylvania was the Quakers, and Rhode Island's a Congregational Baptist, and Maryland was a Catholic colony. And so you get these narratives of oppressed people that were coming over here seeking the kind of religious freedom they didn't have in Europe. And it ends up being a fascinating study in people that were building the American dream before there was even America.
That's right.
So,
And even before that, you
Absolutely.
look at the Native Americans who had lived here long before them, and
absolutely.
their history, which doesn't, and we allude to it, but as Martin had brilliantly said at one of our other events, it's not quite our story to tell,
Right.
the Native American narrative, but we do talk about them to the extent that they are relevant to the images that we have here. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you have to acknowledge that.
Yeah,
Because a
can't
lot of
pretend
times
they
I
weren't
say that
here.
too, like I won't say something about, like somebody else, if somebody shares something with me, I won't share that because it's not my story to tell. I'll talk about things that are, my story, I can be open about sometimes if I choose to, but you have to acknowledge certain things that are the truth.
Sure, you don't
and that's
tell
what
them-
you're doing.
right.
You weren't going to do half truths.
right, you don't
Yeah.
tell their story, but you acknowledge that there is one,
There is.
and that's it's a different story. It's a story that goes before us.
Yeah.
And that really is married to the land in a way that I don't think anyone who had immigrated here will ever be.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah.
I agree.
So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a really fun,
Yeah.
book to write.
And a fascinating exercise in kind of learning about those times and spaces in which these stories are told. And Mystic's a microcosm of all of these great narratives, and they all kind of congregate in one area. And it's fascinating how this little slice of land, just a few miles wide, a few miles long, can hold so much rich history.
Yep, to share. And so I have to ask you, so if someone were to tell you, hey, I'm going to Mystic, I'm going to Mystic, Connecticut, but I'm only going to be there for one day. Say they're driving through New England and they're like, I'm only going to be there for one day. I'm going to start with you, Jade.
Oh, that's so good.
Where would you recommend them to go, or what would you recommend them to go visit? One day they have, because they're doing a road trip New England, and what would you say, you got to go see this?
Sure. I think it would depend on what your interest is, but for the general tourist, I would say make sure they go down the main street, because there are wonderful shops and wonderful restaurants right here in walking distance.
Yep.
You just go up and down this street. They could use the book as a walking tour and learn
That's
all
true.
about all these different sites right here on this main strip. And if they have even more time, they can take a little side excursion up this road, see the library, Spicer Mansion, right across the
First
street.
time I've seen this library.
Yeah.
We're going to browse around after my husband loves
It's
libraries.
beautiful.
I'll peek around,
Yes.
yeah.
So there's a lot of history packed right into this tiny little space. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. And for
Martin,
me,
you?
it all ties into the personal memories for me. So go to Earl Cemetery, where we decided to write the book, and then go to the engine room and order mussels, because that's her favorite.
Yeah, my kids
Yes.
go to the intro. I went
Love
there
it.
once. I got a good burger there.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good. And then come by the library and look at her book, and then go to Bank Square and buy a copy of it.
But there you go. That's what this is about, that we're promoting, right?
A little bit, yeah. But I mean, that's how I view history. I mean, history, granted, is supposed to be this kind of black and white view of how things actually happen, but it's not the law. It's colored by our personal prejudices and by how we view things. And so my advice would be take in the drawbridge, but look at it, and some people are going to look at it, oh, this is a historical bridge, and engineers are going to look at it and say this is a marvel of engineering, and the people that like horror stories are going to be like, what if the basket fell on my car? So take in history.
I wonder if that house is haunted.
Exactly.
What is it? The engine house?
The engine house, yes.
Or the little operator's house. I think there are some rumors about that.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But take in those things that are important to you, and then, but the mussels are to die for. They really are.
There you go. So the engine room, that's what you recommend, and the cemetery.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And of course,
You're
it's
gonna find your name on a tombstone in there somewhere. I mean, the fact that it was a Captain Martin Smith, and I'm just like, okay, but where's my boat?
Yeah, that's right.
It's a little bit morbid, but it's kind of fun to go in there and kind of look around. Kids love to run
And
around.
it's very picturesque.
It's right there on the river. It really is. It's so gorgeous.
It's funny to say that, and you felt like that was a sign, because I'm going to share a little story now. I don't even know if I tell Paul about this, but one day I go pretty much everywhere with Paul. So when I'm without him, I tend, even with the GPS, to get lost somehow when I'm driving and stuff. And I remember it was before we were getting married, and I was like, I just, I knew, like, in my heart we were doing the right thing, but you just want that, confirmation. I got lost because my mind was drifting, and I ended up in a cemetery, and the big headstone, it said Corcoran, and that was my late husband's last name.
Oh.
You know what I mean? So I said, yep, I'm right where I'm supposed to be, like giving yep,
This
you're
is a
good,
sign.
But so I know what you mean about signs, and it's funny because I'm like, I have to turn around, so I pull and I go, I turn around cemetery. And then I looked at the headstone, and I'm like, there it is, everything's gonna be fine. But I knew everything was gonna be fine, but it's just like that confirmation.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just like you're gonna do something, you're gonna do it, in your heart it's right, but then when you get that little sign that's a confirmation, you're like, yes.
That's
And
a
I
great
do,
story.
but I do believe in signs like that.
Yeah.
I think that if you're open to them, you'll see them.
Sure.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? We'll all see them, whether it's a cardinal, whether it's, whatever,
Yeah.
a certain scent, that someone that was here and passed on and you smell that scent and you're like, I think they're nearby. But, that's me. I mean, I know some people probably think, oh, no. But I think if you're open to it, those signs will happen,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and even though Smith may be a common last name, but Martin Smith.
Yeah, Captain Martin Smith.
Yeah, Captain. Let's not forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And so when you're not working or researching or teaching or spending time with kids, what do you like to do that's just for you on your own, like as a person like that you enjoy,
I am a big Star Trek fan. I've been rewatching The Next Generation.
Okay.
I keep telling Jade I'm going to have a son one day named John Luke, and she's laughing at me. She's like, your kid's going to get beat up, she says. So, I like to watch, Star Trek. I love to play with my dog. He's, an absolute...
You were saying you loved it,
Yeah.
So that for you is like just
Right.
peaceful and relaxed.
And the funny part about it is that I'd never even heard of Shetland sheepdogs until I met Jade. And Jade has a Shetland sheepdog named Nova. And Nova was kind of the inspiration for me getting Che. And that was, matter of fact, the day after I graduated from Penn, I drove out to, what was the day after, but it was like the month after. I drove out to Drums, Pennsylvania and picked him up. And I remember texting with her while I was going to get him, and it was just like, one of those things where it's just like, this is kind of what I want. So yeah, I spend a lot of time with my dog. I spend a lot of time, I'm a science fiction, fantasy nerd. I really get into all those things. But, my passions and the things I'm passionate about are really tied into who I am. I mean,
Right.
if nobody was reading what I wrote, I'd still be a writer. So
Because you love it.
I do, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. But it's nice when people read it and enjoy it, right?
Right,
Mhm.
absolutely.
It's a good feeling, I imagine. And how about you, Jade? What is your thing that you enjoy doing besides, when you're not researching, when you're not writing, something you like doing for yourself?
I think, I'm a big hiker. I love hiking.
We like that. We love
Yeah,
to hike.
I'm a big hiker. I love getting into nature. I also really like doing stuff in my community. I like making friends and getting out there. So in Sandpoint, I do a lot of work with the Sandpoint Literary Collective, where we try to have events and workshops, and we're actually having him come out to do a couple workshops on children's literature there. So I like to really just be involved in the community and connect with people. And yeah.
So you're definitely a people person, but then you like to get out into the nature.
I'm a
getting
good
out.
half and half. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, we all are. I think all of us have a lot of different parts to us. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But yeah, we like to get out in nature. It's like I don't know. I just feel closer to for me. I feel closer to God out in nature. I just feel that peace that's around. I mean, and a lot of times we're out there and we're like, there's nobody else out there. I mean, granted, we go out late at night and when we walk, we walk like when you shouldn't be probably, but we're like it's so beautiful. But on the times when it is light out, so we're like nobody else is here. Like we have a place all the time. And it's so much beauty to take in.
Absolutely.
Have you hiked Lantern Hill?
I haven't, I've hiked everywhere but there, so I need to do that.
You need to do that, yeah.
I think my
I'm trying
favorite
to
is
squeeze
Bluff
that in.
Point.
Yeah, Bluff Point's really nice.
Yes.
There's a lot of shade there and everything too
Mhm.
going around and stuff, so yeah.
During our first book tour, she took me out to Bluff Point. I was not ready. I had on a pair of Converse Chuck Taylors, flat shoes. And she's like, we'll go hike the trail. And Nova was with us, and we take off going down the trail. And then, 3.5 miles later, I've got blisters the size of pancakes on my heels. And I'm just sitting there. And she's, at the time, I was in a lot worse shape than I am now. So she's fit. She's ready to go. And she's like, I do this every day. And I'm sitting there about halfway through. And part of me is just like, I got to keep up. I'll never live this down if I don't keep up. And then part of me is just like, I want to lay down on the trail and cry right now. So
Yeah, that's like me with Paul. I'm like, okay, I go, we're gonna go like slow, right? And I'm like going, I can go, but I don't ever like to be like it's a race. He goes, who are we competing with? I go, you're right. No, and he goes, don't worry about it. We'll go right on our pace. But we'll be driving somewhere, and a lot of times we'll see a place, and I may not even be dressed like like now I have like just these slip-on sneakers or something. And I'll be like, let's check it out,
Yeah.
And then I'm laughing because me, I probably posted a picture. They're probably like, why is she dressed like that going hiking? Because we didn't know we're going. But we have our hiking sticks in the trunk, so if it's
Perfect.
if we need them, we don't always need them,
right. Sure.
But if it is secret, we can have them, but stuff like that. But
Yeah.
sometimes just spur the moment's like the most fun things. Or you're driving by and you're like, oh, let's check that out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so now, but before we close out, I know that you don't have a copy of the children's book right now.
I do not.
But you do have this, and do you want to explain to our friends what this is?
Sure. This is Stars Over Latin America. It's my most recent picture book. It came out on March 9th of this year. It retells the story of the motorcycle diaries of Che Guevara, who was a Argentine revolutionary that did a lot of work in the Cuban Revolution and everything else. But before that, he was just a young medical student in Argentina, and him and a buddy of his decided, we're going to take this broken down motorcycle and ride all the way across South America. And they made it about a third of the way. The motorcycle broke down, but they continued going across South America. They went to a leper colony and did a lot of work there because they were trained as doctors and everything else. And so it's really kind of a coming-of-age story, how a young man starts to see his world and how it influences both his personal and political beliefs and what he feels like his place in the world is.
And so this just came out March 9th of this year, so you've been very busy.
Yes, I've been touring behind this as well, and then I had another one through Arcadia with another friend of mine that I wrote that came out on June 25th. So it's been a busy summer.
To say the least. And I thought my year was busy with the kids getting married and babies being born and babysitting. I'm starting to feel like I'm pretty chill now. So now that kind of reminds me of like, back like before I graduated high school, but back maybe in Folsom where a lot of people after they graduated high school or something, sometimes they would like, before they go to college, they'd go over to Europe and like backpack.
Yes.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
And that's really how it started. Yeah, I mean,
It kind of reminds me of that kind of story kind
Absolutely.
of thing. Am I off there a little bit, or, kind of about...
It's very similar, except for he decided to, go fight the Cuban Revolution in 1959 as a result of his backpacking.
Right.
So I mean, that was a big step to take, to be like, and there's a pivotal scene in the book where he realizes, I'm a doctor, but I also have this place to be a conscious person and an activist and everything else, and it leads him, to literally fighting in the Cuban Revolution against all odds, against the, the dictatorship that the Batista government had put into place, and they won. So, I mean, I'd like to think that maybe if I'm going to have one of those kind of coming of age moments, I'm going to spend some, time doing that. I don't think I would ever go off to war, but,
Takes brave people, yeah.
it does. I mean, and it's a rousing story because it's not a story that gets told a lot because most of the narratives from Central and South America are ignored in American academia. And so these are one of the things, at 30 I read, I was reading about this, about Che Guevara, and it's like, I wish I would have known about this when I was 15. But they don't tell these kind of things in public institutions. And so this kind of all ties back into wanting to discuss the things that I wanted to read about.
So again, this is a book that, tells people things that they're not going to find in the classroom or typical books, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's learning history, but yet it's an adventure kind of thing. It's also like an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
They're on a path, they think for one thing and end up doing something else.
Absolutely. I mean, and it goes from, we're just going to have fun backpacking across, South America to, oh my God, we gotta have James.
Serving them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And now, children's books?
Yes, that one, the one I wrote before this one.
And you have another one, right? Or
Right.
more than this one?
Well, the other one I wrote
This is the most recent?
This is the most recent. I wrote one before this called Little Carl, which is a kid's picture book, kind of ties into the golden rule, that type of thing. My next one that comes out, and we just got all the proofs sent off to the publisher this week, is on Charlie Chaplin.
That's nice.
And it ties into his movie, The Great Dictator, which was about the rise of Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany and how they, was willing to turn. And Chaplin was haunted by the fact that him and Hitler were born in the same week, in the same year, and that, the tramp looked a little bit like Hitler and everything else. And so this was him trying to, in a way say, look, this guy's a scuzzball. I'm going to use comedy to try to take him down.
Right.
And we've had some, the Chaplin Estate provided a lot of pictures and a lot of background as far as some of the text. They've been absolutely wonderful dealing with him and his family. And it was a book that I really wanted to write for a long time, and I finally got the chance to do it, so.
That's wonderful. Your children books are different because, all children's books teach lessons, you know what I mean? Because, we read them to the granddaughters and stuff, and they all have, a lesson to it or a little story to it. But yours are actually teaching history, but you're doing it in a way where children can relate, right?
Absolutely.
So how we were all saying we didn't like history when we were younger, but it can take someone to learn about history in a way that they can relate.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Which is relatable, which is different, but when I taught CCD, I felt like that. They did a special book for us, and so they would tell the story, where they were stories that came from the Bible, but they were in terms of children, so they could relate to it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I could relate to it too, because I was probably on their level.
I also did
Yeah, but
CCD,
you know what I mean?
so yeah.
Yes, you know what I'm saying. But the thing
CCD and confirmation class and the whole night.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's easy to relate. So it sounds like what you're doing is you're teaching history, but they don't even know they're learning history because it's an adventure and it's a different way of teaching it. You know what I mean? It's a different form. So it's nice because while it's a children's book, it's also a learning book, and they won't even realize it because they'll be enjoying it. You know?
Absolutely. And that was
Sounds pretty clever.
Yeah. And it's nice because, again, these are the stories I wanted to hear as a kid, and I didn't get the opportunity to hear them. And we tend to forget who some of those pivotal figures are. It gives us the opportunity to give them their due, so to speak. And, it's tough because you could write a million words about Charlie Chaplin. You could write a million words about Che Guevara. I think Che's biography that John Lee Anderson did was almost 400,000 words. My challenge is to put that into 1,000 words, find somebody that can do wonderful work with the pictures, and put it in a format that kids can understand.
Right. And I think, like you said, it's there's so many people, about getting rigid because, we all know Mother Teresa now, Saint Teresa, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman. But we also know there's a lot of wonderful women out there that no one will ever know about.
Absolutely.
You know, because they do things as anonymity, people don't know about, you know what I mean? So it's,
Or they're working in groups of people. A lot of the way history
Yeah.
is taught is through these pivotal figures who are almost deified as gods. But there's a whole movement, this whole groundswell of people
Exactly.
behind those
Exactly.
figures.
It's not just that person.
The
Yeah.
community,
Mhm.
right,
Figurehead, you know.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of stuff
I
that
agree.
goes into that as well. So yeah.
You know, like they say, even with children, it takes a village to raise a child. You know what I
Sure,
mean?
sure.
It's not just like, you know,
Mhm.
you have a good child, like, you're doing a great job, you know,
Yeah.
well, yeah, me, the grandparents, the neighbor, you know what I mean? Like everybody combined. You know, I think that's what makes the world grand, is because I think that's why we're all here, is to help one another
Mhm.
in some
Absolutely.
form or another.
Mhm.
You know, whatever. God gives us all a talent. I haven't found mine yet, but,
Please.
but someday, but the thing
We're
is,
sitting right here
Yeah.
listening to your talent. Come on.
but I think that, you know, whatever, we're born with, we're meant to share it, you know, with
Yeah.
one another and share that. And so
Mhm.
I'm glad that you're sharing that with us and with a lot of other people. And so before we close out, I would just like to mention again tonight, and tomorrow's events. So
Mhm.
anybody out there that sometimes people tune in late for something, you can mention it, or they could pick up your most recent book that you co-wrote together entitled The Mystic. And it's beautiful, and in case you're just tuning in, Jade was explaining how you can read the book in, oops, that's okay, I don't need my notes anymore.
Okay.
You can read the book in depth, or you can skim it and see the pictures and still see different places that you would like to visit or learn different facts about Mystic and just really how historic it is. We all know how beautiful it is and how we love to come and visit and everything, but there's a lot more to it than just that.
Mhm.
And they can learn about that again, if you could give tonight tomorrow's events, please.
Sure. So tonight we'll be here at the Mystic New Ink Library from 7 to I think 8:30.
8:30. I believe.
We're going to give a talk, a very visual talk with lots of images. We're going to delve into postcard history. The most interesting aspects of our book. We'll talk about some of the new discoveries that we made in the course of writing this book that are not recorded elsewhere in the Chronicles of Mystic History. And then tomorrow night we're going to be at Jealous Monk doing pub trivia, Mystic History pub trivia.
Yes.
You'll have a chance to win.
And excuse me, that starts at 8 o'clock, correct?
Yeah, from 8 to
8 to
10.
10, yes.
8 to 10 tomorrow at Jealous Monk,
Yes.
Mystic History Pub Trivia. You can answer some Mystic History questions sprinkled into the trivia. You can consult the book to try to win and get the right answers. And then at the end,
That's
the
gonna be
winning
fun.
team. The winning team will get signed copies. And if you don't win, you still have a chance to purchase.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And you get to hang out with us. So there's that.
That's right, and they're fun people. And I'll tell you something, Paul and I just met them like randomly, like, you know, we had our granddaughter,
Serendipitous.
Parker, and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my favorite movie, Serendipity. I love that movie. We had to go eat in Serendipity, Paul, Ron, and I in New York City in February. I love that. I knew there's a connection, but you know, every now and then, like when Paul and I go someplace and I see people, I kind of like, I'm a little bit intuitive. I'm not psychic by any means, but I just have that intuition. And I was like, when I saw your book and everything, I said to Paul, I got to go back. These two would make a great interview. And I think a lot of my friends, they love to read, they love Mystic. And the combination, I'm like, I gotta ask them if they'll do a live interview with me.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful that you did. I really appreciate how gracious you are, because I know you're very, very busy and you're trying to wrap it up by the end of this month, correct?
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I appreciate you squeezing Paul and I in and sharing everything with us and sharing everything with everyone out there. I'm very grateful for your time. I wish
Grateful
you
for you
much
too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
My pleasure, and I wish you much success. And we'll stay in touch via
Yes.
Facebook and stuff to keep you updated and stuff like that. And all that.
Stonington when that
I
comes
look
out.
forward. Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah.
We'll meet up again.
Yes.
In the meantime, thank you so much.
Thank
I appreciate
you.
it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much. Yes.
All right, and to all of you who tuned in with us, thank you so much. And don't forget about their 2 events if you can make it, or if not, they mentioned earlier in the interview where you can purchase their book Mystic. There's lots and lots of places, local places, and then it's also on Amazon. And so all different places you can purchase a book if you're interested. And thank you all. Have a great Monday. Bye.
Bye.